106.7 Lights FM.
Hi, I'm Christine Nagy from Light FM. Today, I'd like to shine a light on people who have been dealing with the after effects of COVID-19, the long haulers. So we have special guests with us today, Diana Barron. Diana is the founder of Survivor Corps, and Dr. Natalie Lambert. Now, Dr. Lambert is the research director of Survivor Corps. She is also a researcher at Indiana University School of Medicine. Welcome, Diana, Dr. Lambert. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's start with you and how Survivor Corps came to be, because I feel like it's all you.
Well, it was all me for about a minute, and then it became me plus everybody else, because this has been a group effort, if ever there was one, with a group now over 165,000 people. I stopped counting a while ago. I was one of the first people in the United States to get a confirmed case of COVID in March of 2020. I was by far not the first person to get COVID in the United States, not at all, but one of the first confirmed cases in the New York area. And I went very public with my case because, at the time there was this tremendous stigma to it, as if it was some sort of venereal disease rather than, the product of having taken one wrong breath, basically. I had been at a meeting where a couple of the people had been at a super spreader event. Everyone at the meeting was infected, and one person died 2 weeks later. I had what I call the Tylenol and Gatorade kind of COVID. I was pretty sick, but never sick enough to be hospitalized. Never even close enough, not even close to being hospitalized, thankfully. But I was pretty sick for a couple of weeks, and I spent 18 days in isolation because at that time we had no idea how long you were contagious for. And during that time, I became completely obsessed with the idea of convalescent plasma and the fact that if I were to come out of this as one of the first survivors, that I would have this sort of internal hazmat suit, this, superhuman skill. I could go out and save lives. And, meanwhile, I haven't taken a science class since high school. So the idea that in the middle of the greatest, crisis of our lives, by the time I got out of isolation, it was April 4th, or about then. In 2020, New York City was on fire, and there was literally no way to help. There was nothing you could do if you weren't a doctor, except for here I was, and I had plasma that could save other people's lives, and experiences that could inform scientists, and blood that I could give to scientists and had them examine it and try to understand the mechanism of this virus that was, taking our country, our world by its grip. And I realized that if I had that power as one individual, imagine what a coalition of people could do, what a coalition of survivors could do. And so I started Survivor Corps on March 24th of last year with the mission of mobilizing an army of survivors to donate their plasma but moreover to support science in every way possible. And that means, taking part in every study, anything that you could to contribute to the body of knowledge that would lead to an understanding of what was going on in people's bodies. And specifically after, by mid-April, we were finding that people were not recovering. And that's when we also became a patient advocacy group because, we realized very quickly that surviving COVID did not mean recovering from COVID. And it's still yet to be determined what percentage of people develop long COVID, or, it goes by so many names, but who suffer the long-term effects of the virus. And I still think that it's too early to really put any sort of number on it because, at first we saw people. I'd say that there were two categories of people who we saw coming out of COVID. There was the group who was chronically ill from day one. Those are the people who are on day 430 of having a fever right now. They have never had one well day since the day they got sick. There's a second group of people who had more of a relapsing, remitting, it where it comes in waves. That's what happened to me. I actually came out feeling pretty okay. I still had some pretty severe stomach issues, some sleep disturbances, deep inner ear pain, headaches, but not terrible. And then I had a full symptomatic relapse over this summer. And then what we've learned is that there's also a third group of people, and those are the people who think that they're fine, who come out saying, that wasn't anything, or maybe they were even asymptomatic.
And this was what I was just about to ask you too. By going on to Facebook is easy for me to access. Twitter, Survivor Corps, I do see a variation of symptoms, so many, and so my heart goes out to everyone having to deal with this, and I'm so glad that you're here for support, because people need to know there's hope, need to know they're not alone, and need to be heard and recognized. And that's exactly what you're doing. What are the most common symptoms that you're finding? And I know you said it's hard to put a time frame. At what point do you think people consider themselves a long hauler?
Well, the most frequently occurring symptoms, the long-lasting symptoms that people report, fatigue is always number one. And it's not a typical fatigue like you're tired after a long day. It's fatigue that's so severe that if you even get up and get a shower, your energy is gone for the day.
Right.
So very, very severe. Things like headaches, a lot of the cognitive and neurological impacts. So things like difficulty concentrating, sort of memory problems. People sometimes call it brain fog, as well as the shortness of breath persists for a long time, especially when people try to, they feel like they're feeling a little bit better and they try to exercise or go for a walk and find that again, then all of their energy is gone for the day. There's also this idea of changing symptoms. So this is a variable that was defined by survivors. So is the nature for symptoms to seem to resolve a little bit or get better, and then to suddenly come back. And it's the sort of coming and going of symptoms that actually makes it really difficult for people to return to work, because that's something that doesn't fit our current workplace policies at all. So there's a wide array of symptoms, and what we found from research is that it can be unique to each individual. So some people have a lot of headaches. For other people, it's a lot of skin rashes, bruising, or types of neurological impacts. So for any one long hauler, it doesn't look the same. And as you can see, that makes it difficult to sort of filter into our public consciousness of this disease, because if there's not one good definition of it, it can be difficult to understand. But if we know that it's different for everyone, it lasts a long time, and it can make it really difficult for people to function, that's really how we need to think of this.
Yeah, the heterogeneity of the symptoms and the experiences is just so vast and presents a challenge in terms of creating a definition. And traditional science and medicine likes definitions, and they want to fit everything into a box. And this might need its own new box that is flexible enough to cater to each person's situation, individual situation. I think we started off thinking about COVID as a respiratory disease, very quickly changed our, by April, May, understood that it was also a vascular and inflammatory disease. But I truly think that we will look back on it as largely a neurological disease as well. I am 100% convinced that I had encephalitis as part of acute COVID. I felt like my brain was going to bust out of my skull for months. And I've never experienced anything like that. And when I went through the Mount Sinai's post-COVID care center, I went for cranial sacral occupational therapy. And the woman said that my head presented as somebody who had had a severe head trauma, almost, worse than a concussion, but she couldn't believe that I hadn't been in a terrible car accident or anything else. Just COVID.
Yeah, and you're someone who said you felt you had a mild to moderate.
Yeah, pretty mild to average case of
Right.
COVID, no less. Nothing out of the ordinary, nothing dramatic.
Because that's what I'm finding, and this is just amongst my friends. And again, what we share on social, headaches, like, suffering from headaches after having this in a big way. Smell and taste is such a big one. And, Dr. Lambert, maybe you can even explain why that's happening. I know we're understanding that it's a neurological illness, but like, why is it going after our taste and smell, and how come it's taking so long to recover from that?
Mm-hmm. Well, we're still trying to understand precisely how all of this happens, but it's clear that COVID does attack particular nerves. And if you think about breathing in the virus through your nose, it makes sense that the nerves related to smell, and then which is also related to taste, is all right there. But it really does attack. It's affected that nerve tremendously, but there's other nerves in the body that it also can impact. But I think that people who have lost the sense of taste and smell, and it's a lot of these symptoms that, you know, on the surface, it doesn't sound like that's a big deal, but it's a huge deal to not be able to tell if food you're eating is spoiled. A lot of our appetite and our feeling of wellness is related to be able to smell things or taste things. So just like you probably have heard from your friends, we just need to realize that if you haven't experienced it directly, a lot of these things can be very devastating. And the fact that we're at the stage of trying to understand how and why these things are happening, and we're not yet at the stage of being able to provide treatment for this, is the very difficult part of being a long hauler.
Yeah, I mean, some of these symptoms, you need to really think about them in a larger sense. So why do we care about taste and smell? Well, they are hardwired into us so to protect us from danger, to keep us from ingesting poisons by accident, to be able to smell if there's a gas leak in your house. We've had many members experience where they have not smelled a gas leak and someone had to alert them, and that is terrifying. Or to not be able to, taste your child's food to make sure that it's not rancid. It's a primal sort of thing to your taste and smell, in the same way that losing a tooth, not only is losing a tooth devastating for, because of cosmetic reasons, but it's far more than cosmetic. In nature, if you lost your teeth, you would die. So you go to when I would tell people the story of my son, everyone's first reaction was, oh my God, that's my worst nightmare. And I'd have to say, of course, it's everybody's worst nightmare. If you go to the self-help section in the bookstore and look up dreams, the first one is going to be about teeth coming out. Not to mention that it's most Americans' worst financial nightmare, because it really shines a light on this inequity that we insure different organs differently. And this is a virus that we now know can affect not only every organ in the body, but every nerve, anything. So, just as Dr. Lambert was saying, we breathe in the virus, and what sits at the back of the nasal passage, but the olfactory bulb, which controls smell and taste. All of those nerves are right next to each other. It's right next to the vagus nerve, which is responsible for all kinds of autonomic functions. So, whereas again, I didn't have a very severe case, but it took months and months before I was able to regulate my internal body temperature. I was constantly moving from room to room, taking sweatshirts on and off, because that's an autonomic function that for me had gotten, out of whack.
Right.
But for others, it's breathing, and it's the regulation of their heart rate, things that are, really concerning.
Absolutely. And quality of life too, of joy and being well and recovering. And that's part of it. People are saying, I just want like my normal life back. Are we making any progress? Is there anything you can suggest to people yet? Because I see tricks online, like do this to get back your taste, and keep smelling really strong items to get back your sense of smell. Has there been anything that sparked that's helped people at all?
Those are the things that we've seen report of. So sort of the sensory training techniques. And I think that does work for some people, but for others, it does seem to be a matter of time, and it can be a very long time. So for some, it's been well over a year. Yeah.
Right.
And we don't know, we don't have answers yet. We have suggestions that might help along the edges. I was told by Mount Sinai last August to wear compression pants every day, because it would help the repair of the vasculature. And I wasn't having any swelling of my ankles or anything, but I have to say that I've been wearing good running pants, really, every single day since then. And on the days that I don't, I really am much more tired. I feel the difference. And it is the only thing about shorts weather coming upon us that is making me nervous is that I'm not going to be able to wear my compression pants every day. But
Just start a
you know,
new look. Wear 'em
right,
under.
exactly. It'll be a very sweaty look, but whatever it takes, but these are things that can help around the edges, but these aren't cures. These aren't,
Exactly.
not there yet.
Yeah, the the symptom that has been brought to my attention because I'm living through it is, commonly referred to as tinnitus. So I was sick in March, and that was my first symptom. I had already gotten the vaccine, and then just woke up with this horrible tinnitus, and I thought it was my allergies, and because it kind of comes and goes with allergies for me, but this is like off the charts, like I've never experienced it before, and it's been hanging in there ever since. So I started to research online and found that there are other people who have had COVID and have also been dealing with tinnitus. Are you starting to hear more about that now as well?
Absolutely. Dr. Lambert can speak to the statistics, but it is tinnitus and hearing loss are among the top reported issues that we're hearing from. And it's one of the things that is causing the most sort of anguish, the most it's really it sounds like, oh well, cardiac issues are much more serious, or a diagnosis of diabetes is, that's really horrible, and of course they're all horrible, but the psychological ramifications of the tinnitus cannot be underestimated. But Dr. Lambert can give you more of a sense of the numbers than I can.
Absolutely. So Diana posted a poll in Facebook asking people about hearing issues that they had developed. So after getting COVID. So if people had this issue prior to COVID, that was not they would not take the survey for that. So people saying new hearing problems, that was actually 68% of people who took the poll said that they had new hearing problems after COVID. It was 63% of people who said that they had developed tinnitus. And of people who responded, they said that tinnitus had significantly affected their quality of life. That was 15%. But if you think about it, 15% of the millions and millions of people who have had COVID is quite a lot of people.
Yeah.
And just that the reports that people are saying about tinnitus, it's similar to what you said, Christine, is that it's not the normal sort of seasonal allergy, sort of buzzing in the ears, that it's very loud, it's very disruptive. And it's really important to, for people to know that our senses are a way of interpreting data about our environment and our way of interacting with the world. And, COVID has affected people's hearing. It's caused a lot of blurry visions, decreased quality of vision, so
Right.
sense of smell and taste.
Right.
So it really is affecting people's sensory abilities, and that has a severe impact on quality of life, as I'm sure you've experienced as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I don't think, we can't go without recognizing Kent Taylor, the owner of Texas Roadhouse, who in March committed suicide due to lingering tinnitus from an average case of COVID. And that to me was it was just such a devastating story, but also it really scared me that he was a canary in the coal mine, and that we would see more of this because it can be so agonizing for people.
It is. I've heard people describe it as it consumes them. You're being tortured. It's living hell. You're never getting a break from it. And the tinnitus also triggers negative emotions, like negative sounds do. And again, you're not getting a break. So I'm trying to understand why it happened. And again, is it because it's neurological and it's nerves, and is there a chance of it resolving? Like, what are you finding with people? Are they getting better? Is there improvement over time?
That's something that we're, at the point where we're starting to understand that this is a huge problem. So we don't have data over time yet, but that's something that we're certainly working on. And I and others have thrown in on large grants so that we can track thousands of people across the United States over time, collect data, so have people wear health trackers, collect data on them every minute of every day, have them report their symptom surveys, tell us what they're taking. So it really will take that type of big study to understand all the factors that are involved for something like that, because it's possible that people who were on certain types of drugs prior to getting COVID could have been protected from getting tinnitus. And if that's the case, that could help us find avenues to pursue about how to help people, prevention or also treatment. So unfortunately, we don't have good answers right now. I always recommend to people to try to talk to a specialist for that area, but they also may not have many good answers, but at least you're getting some initial data about the problem. It's awful. Like, as a researcher, what I want most in the world is to get answers that we don't have, for questions we don't have answers to. And it is going to take some time, but I can tell everyone that the smartest people I have ever met and some of the kindest people I've ever met on the planet are working very hard on this problem all the time.
It's wonderful to know.
And I think that it's also a time to also focus on the fact that right now the patients are the experts. And while we know that nerve issues can be very, very difficult to rectify, I would go to that, that's why Survivor Corps is such a tremendous resource. Not just because of our website and the information that we provide you, but our Facebook group where people are sharing their experiences with one another, to find out who from that first wave figured out how to deal with it. Has anyone figured it out? You'll get more wisdom from patients right now, unfortunately, than you will from doctors, and it's not for their lack of trying. This is brand new.
But it's so important, I think, as you said, to share the stories and be recognized and to know there's hope. You just, things will get better. People are working on it. Wonderful, smart, brilliant people are working on it. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we are seeing people have their taste and smell return.
Yes.
That is something that we are seeing actual natural recovery with time happen.
Mm-hmm. I'm so glad. Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that. Also, through Survivor Corps, you let us know about resources. There's doctors who are now specializing in long-term and long hauler COVID patients.
There are centers that are focused on long-term COVID right now, but I think it's safe to say that there are no experts yet on long-term COVID. It remains the patients who are the experts. And that's why we are, thankfully the NIH has, they pledged $1.15 billion with a B to long-term COVID research. And we are waiting anxiously for those grant results, which were supposed to have been come out several weeks ago, to be announced so that those studies can get started immediately. But we are also, working with legislators. We are working to create a COVID registry so we can track a mass group over time. We are working to make sure that long-term COVID patients are given the insurance that they needed, the disability that they are needed, the medical resources they are needed, the wraparound services that they will need going forward to resume a healthy life and get back to their lives, to get back to their jobs, to get back to with their, we're seeing a lot of kids who are suffering the long-term effects of this, and we're seeing them largely neurological issues in young adolescents, which is, to me, extremely upsetting and something that we need to start studying yesterday. We need to start giving families resources for these children who right now have nowhere to go. There are no resources for them. There are big gaps that have been overlooked in, there's been a tremendous push to get the vaccine out, which has been incredible, but we need to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time and take care of those who, look, we could be looking at the largest group of young disabled Americans in our country's history, including wartime. That is sobering, to say the least.
So absolutely. Dr. Lambert, what do you think the repercussions are, as you said, for young people, for adults, mental health, emotional well-being? And is there support for that as well?
It's a really important question to ask. So I have collaborators in California in Irving, and we had been looking at electronic health records. It was from records for people living in the state of California, and we looked at new diagnoses of mental health problems from prior to the pandemic, so in 2019, and comparing to 2020, and we found that the age group that had the greatest increase in the number of mental health diagnoses was actually young people, so people in their 20s. And it was at a very unexpected rate in a wide range of problems. And I think what's really important is that we remember that COVID is this novel disease, and we need to, instead of assuming that any anxiety or new, diagnoses of different types of psychoses, if it's, happening after someone's been infected with COVID, we can't assume that this is due to some sort of general pandemic stress. I think we should actually do more brain scans. We need to do more in-depth research, because there's obviously a huge neurological, cognitive, a biological component to this. So I think that's the really important thing, is that there's a history in mental health of assuming that some problems are automatically related to anxiety. And yes, this is a difficult time for all of us, but we also have developed quite a bit of resilience as a nation towards some of the things that we have to do, changing our routines, wearing masks, people are managing everything that they can. But if someone is having a new serious mental health problem, we need to look at the potential biological causes of that, particularly for young people. And when it comes to developing support, I and other colleagues are looking at the types of programs, and actually we'll be tracking young people who are receiving different types of mental health support to see which programs are the most effective. But it needs to be not just individual groups of researchers who are really passionate about this. This needs to be something that's done at a national scale, and we need resources available to every single American, so that it's not only about managing their own mental health, but also the ability to get different types of scans and diagnoses to see the biological underpinnings of it. And some of the research projects that will come out of the NIH PASC grant will be looking at those types of things, but we need it to happen quickly, because as you know, even if you look at college-age students and the percentage of them that are depressed, it is enormous. Sometimes it's more than half of students who say that they're depressed and that it's affecting their ability to function. So this is another very severe problem, and it'll be an epidemic. I think about the fall coming up and about how students are feeling and how they'll be doing. And we need to, as a nation, be thinking about this and providing the resources that we can right away.
I think one way to approach this is to start making the distinction between mental health and neurological health, and realizing that they are not one and the same. I think that is a first step, is critical.
Diana, just because we're going to have to wrap up, I want to look forward to where we're going next. And do you think the vaccines are helping some long haulers? Is that something that we can look towards to hopefully support people and get us through this?
So that's a great question. So that's been one of the most fascinating things that's happened in the last couple of months. In February, Dr. Akiko Iwasaki from Yale University, who is one of the top researchers in the world, she was floating some ideas on what the possible causes of long-term COVID could be. One was that the viral persistence, that the virus was somehow lurking somewhere in the body and sticking around and had yet to be cleared, which is why I always said that it shouldn't be called post-anything. We don't understand the virus enough to call it post-anything. Another possibility is that the body's immune system is overreacting and the vaccine is, acting as some sort of reset button to the immune system in the same way that many people dealing with chronic diseases feel better for a period of time after having received a flu vaccine or other vaccines, and then later go back to their old patterns. And so what that gave, that sort of clued us into the idea that this might be happening. And we polled our membership and found of 1,000 people polled, 40% had felt relief after the vaccine. Now, the important thing to take from this is the takeaway is not that the vaccine is a cure. The fact that the vaccine is making a lot of people feel better, even if it's only for a period of time, is a clue. It's a breadcrumb trail to what is the mechanism that is going on behind the scenes in the body, and how do we take this information and try to use it to discover what the route to recovery could be. So it's not that the vaccine is the ultimate cure, but it is a clue to get us to the right therapeutic. And so we just, 2 weeks ago, Survivor Corps and Yale launched a study. If you have long-term COVID and you have not gotten the vaccine yet you plan to and have access to New Haven, Connecticut, 3 times over 3 months, you could be a part of history. You could truly make COVID history. Come to the Survivor Corps website and sign up under research. It's right there. And if you don't qualify for that one, sign up for another study. Use your experience for good, to help others. It doesn't matter whether you haven't taken a science class in 7th grade. You can contribute more than most PhDs right now. If you've had COVID and you want to participate in the scientific process, and the scientists are there to take you along for the ride. They will, we have set up a system where it is a true citizen scientist collaboration, where we are walking the same path as equal and valued partners. And I don't think that, I hope that that is our legacy, because it will move science forward faster and better and more in line with patient needs.
Wonderful. And Diana, tell us again, the website, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, best place to find you.
Is survivorcorps.com. That's CORPS, like the Peace Corps or Army Corps. We are Survivor Corps on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Diana Berendt, or you can follow Survivor Corps across platforms. We're there for you, and please join us.
Yeah, it's wonderful to know that you're here supporting us with these brilliant minds and incredible resources. Dr. Lambert, Diana, thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time today and for everything that you're doing. And we'll keep in touch. We're going to follow along with your story. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Christine. We're so appreciative.
106.7 Lights FM.